This happened back in 2008, but it stayed with me all these years. Some things just don't leave you, like the smell of burning wood or a voice you heard only once but can still recall in perfect detail. I was 22 then, freshly out of college, between jobs and living with my parents. So when my Aunt Lorna asked if I could house sit for a week while she visited my uncle in the hospital, I said yes. She lived out near Blackwood Creek in an old white farmhouse that sat alone at the edge of a long, sloping hill. I remembered the place from childhood holidays, a quaint two-story house with warped floorboards, a tin roof that echoed during storms, and a long gravel driveway that wound through a tunnel of pine trees. Isolated, yes, but charming in its own way. Back then, I never noticed how far it felt from everything else, how far it really was from help. When I arrived, the sky was already darkening, clouds bloated and pregnant with rain. Aunt Lorna left me instructions: feed the cat, Daisy, water the plants, don't forget to jiggle the bathroom faucet. She hugged me, handed me the keys, and drove off in a hurry, clearly worried about Uncle Ray's surgery the next morning. That night, the storm began. It didn't stop for 3 days. Rain came down in waves, like someone up there was dumping buckets. The wind slammed against the windows like it was trying to break in. The TV signal came and went, and my phone service was basically non-existent. I couldn't even scroll mindlessly through social media. The farmhouse felt huge when it was just me inside it. I spent most of the first evening curled on the couch under a blanket, watching the flickering TV screen and listening to the wind moan through the chimney like a warning. By the third day, I hadn't slept much. The constant storm was fraying my nerves. Every creak of the wood or scratch of tree branches against the siding made me jump. I tried to keep Daisy nearby. She was good company, but even she seemed unsettled, staring at the walls for long stretches like she was tracking something I couldn't see. And then came the blackout. It was just past midnight. I remember because I had been microwaving a mug of tea to help me sleep. One moment, the warm glow of the kitchen lights, the next, total darkness. I stood there for a long second, blinking. My ears picked up the hum of rain more clearly now, and something else. The sound of the house breathing. That's how it felt, like the walls had inhaled. I groped through the dark for the flashlight that I'd left on the counter. When I turned it on, its pale beam barely pushed back the blackness. Every corner seemed deeper now. Then came the knock. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. They came from the back door, the one that opened into the kitchen from the outside porch. Not hurried, not panicked, just intentional. I froze. The nearest neighbor was a half-mile away, down a slope and across a stretch of trees. No one should have been out there, especially not in that storm. I tiptoed to the window beside the back door and peeked out through the sheer curtain. I couldn't see anyone, just the dark shapes of rain-soaked trees and the flash of lightning far off. Then, the doorknob turned. It didn't rattle violently, like someone trying to force their way in. It turned with care, steady, deliberate. I backed away, heart hammering. I ran, up the stairs, through the narrow hallway into the guest bedroom at the end of the hall. I slammed the door shut and dragged the wooden desk chair in front of it. My fingers fumbled with the latch. The room was cold, colder than it should have been. The window on the far wall was wide and overlooked the backyard. It had thick floral curtains, which were now billowing gently inward, as if someone had just opened them moments before. And then came the second sound. It started soft, so faint I thought I was imagining it. A scratch, then another, like long fingernails drawing slowly up the glass. I didn't want to look, but I had to. I turned my head, step by step, until I was facing the window. And there it was, a face, pressed against the glass, inches from mine. Its skin was pale, almost gray-blue in the moonlight. The mouth stretched too wide. The smile curled unnaturally at the edges, filled with jagged, uneven teeth. The eyes, if you could call them that, were hollow, dark pits that seemed to reach back forever. It wasn't trying to get in. It wasn't knocking anymore. It was just watching me. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. My limbs were locked. I don't know how long I stood there paralyzed. Seconds, minutes, an hour. Then, without warning, the window rattled violently. I fell back against the bed, pulling the blanket around me like that would somehow protect me. But when I looked again, it was gone. Just like that. The room was still, silent, except for the rain. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the bed, flashlight in hand, door locked, blanket up to my chin. Daisy never came into the room. She hid beneath the basement stairs, hissing whenever I got close. When morning came, I felt like I'd survived a war. Sunlight was struggling through the thinning clouds. The storm had finally passed. I called the police, not because I thought they'd believe me, but because I needed someone else to walk that house, to say they'd checked it, that it was empty. 2 officers came out in a patrol car an hour later. One walked the property with me, the other checked the house. Of course, they found nothing out of place, no signs of a break-in. But then, the younger officer called us over. Out by the back porch, leading from the edge of the house towards the woods, muddy footprints. One after another, clear as day. But here's the thing. There were none leading to the house, only away. Like someone or something had appeared right outside that door and then vanished into the trees. I stayed one more night, but only because I didn't have a car and no one could come pick me up until the next day. I slept with the lights on, TV playing static, flashlight under my pillow. Every time the wind brushed the windows, I flinched. I never told my aunt what happened. She'd just think I had an overactive imagination. Maybe I do, but I've never gone back to that house. Not once. Some nights, during storms, I still dream about it. The pale face, the empty eyes, that too wide smile. Sometimes, I wake up to silence, but my heart is pounding like I've been running. And every now and then, when I pass a window in the middle of the night, I swear, just for a second, I see something looking back.
I was driving home from a late shift at the hospital when the storm hit. Sheets of rain turned the highway into a black mirror, my headlights barely cutting through the dark. My body ached with exhaustion, the kind that makes your bones feel hollow. The radio crackled with static, occasionally blipping into an oldie station before cutting out again. It was just past 2 a.m., and the highway was deserted except for the rhythmic swipe of my wipers and the rain hammering against the windshield. My eyelids were getting heavier by the minute. Then I saw her. At first, she was nothing more than a pale smudge ahead, like fog had taken human form. But as I approached, I realized it was a woman. She stood right in the middle of the road, a soaked white dress clinging to her thin frame. Her long black hair hung like dead vines over her face. No car, no umbrella, no motion. Just staring. I swerved, jerking the steering wheel so hard I nearly lost control. I came to a stop, about 30 feet down the road. My heart was hammering. My hands shook on the wheel. I looked back. She was gone. No sign of her on the road, no silhouette in my rearview mirror, nothing but rain and the dark outline of trees bending in the wind. I sat there, breath fogging up the glass until my pulse slowed. Maybe I'd imagined her. Microsleep, a hallucination. After all, I'd been working a 16-hour shift in the ER. Just as I started driving again, my phone buzzed in the passenger seat. A text from my sister. "You okay? You never passed the diner." I frowned. That didn't make sense. I had passed the diner 20 minutes ago. I remembered the neon sign flickering in the rain, remembered thinking it looked like a dying star. My blood turned to ice. Had I not passed it? Had I turned somewhere? I looked around. Nothing looked familiar. No signs, no exits, just endless stretches of forest pressing in on both sides of the highway. Then I heard it. Sound, fingertips dragging slowly across glass. A faint tap on the passenger window. I turned, heart in my throat. She was standing there, the woman in white. Her skin was pale, almost gray like driftwood and soaked through with rain. Her hair clung to her face, but I could see her eyes now, wide, glassy, and completely black. No whites, no irises. Worse still was her mouth. It was sewn shut. Thick, black thread crisscrossed her lips like someone had stitched them closed with a heavy hand. I screamed, fumbling for the gear stick, jamming the car into drive. The tires spun on the wet road, but finally caught traction. I sped away, glancing into the mirror every several seconds. She was gone. 5 miles later, I spotted a gas station. Its fluorescent sign flickered erratically, half the letters burned out. I pulled in and parked near the entrance, breathing hard, trying to convince myself I wasn't losing my mind. Inside, the place was empty except for a bored-looking attendant flipping through a magazine behind the counter. I hurried to the bathroom, splashing cold water on my face. When I looked up, I saw muddy handprints on the mirror behind me. Small, delicate, like a woman's. I spun around. No one there. I rushed back to the car and peeled out of the lot. The road was different now, twisting, narrower. The trees had creeped closer, their gnarled branches stretching over the road like skeletal fingers. Then the static on the radio returned, but it wasn't static this time. It was whispering, low, raspy, almost inaudible. I turned the volume up. Turn around. I changed the station. You passed her. I yanked the radio knob off entirely. Silence. I don't remember falling asleep. I must have blacked out, because the next thing I remember is waking up to the sound of my car idling. The rain had stopped. Dawn was breaking, casting a pale orange glow through the windshield. I parked in front of the diner. The same diner I had passed earlier in the night. Except now it looked abandoned. The windows were boarded up. Weeds had overrun the lot. The neon sign was shattered. I stepped out of the car. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. I approached the door. It hung open, creaking gently in the wind. Inside, the booths were torn, dust covered everything, and the smell of mildew and rot was overwhelming. On the counter was an old newspaper, its edges browned with age. The headline made my stomach drop. Local woman killed in highway hit and run, mouth sewn shut post-mortem. There was a photo beneath it. It was her, the woman in white. According to the article, she'd been walking home from her engagement party when a car hit her on the highway. The driver was never found. Her body was discovered days later, dumped in a ditch. Someone had stitched her mouth shut. I stumbled out of the diner, nauseous. Back in the car, I tried calling my sister. No signal. I tried GPS. Nothing. Just then, I heard it again. Tap, tap, tap. This time, it came from the back window. I turned, slowly. She was inside the car. In the back seat. I bolted out screaming. The rain started again, as if on cue. The world felt like it was folding in on itself. The trees swayed violently, even though there was no wind. Then, the car engine roared to life. On its own. The headlights turned on, casting a glow on the road ahead. In that light, I saw dozens of figures standing among the trees, all in white, all with their mouths sewn shut. Their eyes were locked on me. Then, nothing. I woke up in a hospital bed, heart monitor beeping beside me. My sister was there, eyes puffy from crying. She told me I'd been found in a ditch off the highway, unconscious. My car was totaled. No one knows how it veered off the road. There were no skid marks, no indication of braking. I asked about the diner. She looked confused. It burned down 20 years ago, she said. The whole place was razed to the ground after that waitress went missing. I didn't say anything. They said I had a concussion, maybe some hallucinations. They sent a counselor to talk to me. But I know what I saw. And last night, as I lay in bed, I heard something outside my window. Tap, tap, tap. I didn't look. I didn't want to see her again. But I know she's waiting for me to tell her story. Or maybe waiting to finish what she started.
Every house has secrets. My grandparents' house just happened to keep its biggest one behind a rusted padlock and a thick wooden door that groaned under its own weight. "For your own good," Grandma would whisper every time I so much as glanced at the basement steps. I grew up hearing that line. My cousins, too. We weren't allowed near it, not even to retrieve a box or grab an old toy. Once, my cousin Ethan dared me to touch the door. I did, and my grandfather caught us. He didn't yell, didn't scream. He just stood there at the top of the steps, hand on the old rifle he always carried, eyes colder than the November wind. We never dared again. Until the flood. It was the October of my sophomore year in college, and I had come home to help after the river crested its banks. The town was drowning, inch by inch, and my grandparents' house, perched at the edge of an old hill, was beginning to weep at the foundation. Mom was out helping at the shelter. Dad was coordinating with the city. That left me alone, bailing water and moving valuables upstairs. My grandparents were gone by then. Grandpa passed 2 years ago. Grandma just last spring. The house had been left to us, a creaky relic filled with lace curtains, antiqued furniture, and silence. I was stacking old photo albums on the dining room table when I heard it. A metallic clink, followed by the unmistakable clatter of something falling. It came from the basement. At first I froze, just like when I was a kid. My breath caught in my throat. I waited, heart hammering against my ribs, ears straining for any more sound. Silence. Cautiously, I approached the door. It looked the same, thick oak, iron hinges, and that giant padlock. Only now, the padlock was hanging loosely from its hasp, open. The rusted loop snapped clean in half, maybe from the pressure, maybe from the years of moisture. Or maybe... No. I reached out and pushed the door open. It gave way with a long, reluctant creak, exhaling a gust of air that smelled of wet soil, mildew, and something else. Something sweet and cloying, like rotting fruit left in a forgotten bowl. I hesitated. Every nerve in my body screamed to shut the door, to pretend I hadn't seen it open. But curiosity is a cruel master. It's patient. It whispers when everything else is silent. Grabbing a flashlight, I began my descent. The steps groaned under my weight, some flexing disturbingly beneath my boots. The light flickered, catching the outlines of shelves crammed with dusty jars, old tools, and rotting boxes. And then I saw it. At the far end of the room, where the concrete wall met a patch of dirt floor, there was a chair. A simple wooden chair, ancient and dark with age, facing the wall. And on it sat a figure. Still, slumped forward in rags that looked like they'd once been a nightgown, or perhaps a hospital gown. The hair was long, gray, matted. I couldn't see its face. It didn't move, didn't breathe. I should have turned around, should have backed up the steps and slammed the door shut and never spoken of it again. But I whispered, "Hello?" The figure didn't respond. I took another step forward, heart pounding. Are you okay? Do you need help?" Still no answer. I moved closer, lifting the flashlight beam to the side of its head. Then the basement door slammed shut behind me. Slam. I jumped, nearly dropping the flashlight. My breath hitched. The air felt suddenly heavier. I spun around, staring at the now closed door, certain someone had followed me in. "Hello?" I called again, louder this time. "Is someone there?" Silence. Then a sound behind me. Wood creaking. Shifting weight. I turned. The figure in the chair was no longer sitting. It was standing, facing me. Its face, if you could call it that, was obscured by the shadows. But I saw enough. The skin hung in loose folds, gray and mottled. The eyes were milky and sunken. The mouth, that's what I remember most, stretched wide in an unnatural smile. Lips peeled back to reveal rows of black, crumbling teeth. It stepped forward. Just one step. I stumbled back, flashlight beam jittering. I slammed against a shelf and sent a jar crashing to the ground. The thing cocked its head and spoke. Not words, no. A sound, wet and hollow, like someone gurgling underwater. I turned and bolted for the stairs, taking them 2 at a time, slipping, scraping my knees on the old wood. I grabbed the door handle and yanked. Locked. Impossible. It hadn't been locked when I came down. Behind me, I heard the creak of the stairs. It was following. I pounded on the door, screaming, "Let me out! Please! Somebody!" No answer. Another step. Closer. I turned around, clutching the flashlight like a weapon. The thing was halfway up the stairs now. Its body moved awkwardly, jerking like a puppet on tangled strings. As it neared, I saw that its feet never touched the steps. It floated slightly, just enough that the toes dragged, scraping along the wood. That sound. A rasping, dragging whisper. Desperate, I flung the flashlight. It hit the figure square in the chest and passed through it. Through, like mist. The light clattered to the steps and rolled down, flickering. The creature paused, then slowly began to dissipate, like smoke unraveling in water. And then it was gone. I collapsed, shaking, heart racing. The door handle suddenly gave way and I tumbled out onto the floor of the hallway. Light poured in from the windows. It was morning. I had been down there all night. But here's the thing. I never blacked out. I never slept. Yet somehow 8 hours had passed. I tried to tell my parents. They said the house was just old, that grief does strange things to people, that the stress of the flood had gotten to me. But I knew what I saw. And worse, I knew what I found. Because that morning, after they left, I went back down. I know, stupid, but I had to know. The basement looked different. The chair was gone. So was the dirt patch. In its place was a smooth concrete wall, as if it had always been that way. But there, near the wall, was something half buried in the corner. A book, leather-bound, moldy, ancient. Inside are journals. Dozens of entries, all written in the same spidery handwriting. They belonged to my great-uncle Stephen, a name never mentioned in the family, a name that didn't even appear in any family photos. His entries were rambling at first, talk of headaches, nightmares, then darker things, visions, whispers from the basement, the belief that something lived beneath the house. I made a pact. It keeps the sickness away. I sit and it watches, and I watch it back. So long as I sit, it sleeps. And the last entry. They want to bury me, lock me away, but I'll keep it quiet. If someone else breaks the seal, it will rise. I've never told anyone about that journal. I burned it the next day. But the dreams started after that. Dreams of the chair, the figure, the dragging sound. Every October, it comes back.
And sometimes, when the night is quiet and the rain begins to fall, I hear the basement door creak open again. It started with a wrong number. I was alone in my apartment during one of those endless autumn storms, the kind where the rain feels personal. It doesn't just fall, it lingers. It presses against the windows like it wants in. The kind where the wind moans through the cracks in old buildings and sounds just a little too much like your name. My building was old, too old for modern insulation. The radiators ticked and clanged like they had bones inside them. Every footstep from the apartment above echoed as if it came from my own hallway. I was on my third cup of tea, curled up with a book I wasn't really reading when my phone buzzed. Unknown caller. I hesitated. Normally I'd let it go to voicemail, but I was bored, a little lonely, maybe even a little curious. I answered. Silence. Then, breathing. Not the kind of heavy breathing you get from prank callers or creeps. This was wet, thick, strangled, like someone gargling with water and blood, like something drowning and trying to speak at the same time. I hung up. A minute later, it called back. Same number. Still unknown. This time, a voice, low, garbled, distorted, managed to crawl through the static. I'm outside. I laughed it off. Told myself it was just a prank, some script kiddie messing with spoofing apps. Still, I walked to the door and checked the peephole, because you always do, don't you? No one ever ignores it completely. Nothing. The hallway was empty, dim. The flickering light above the elevator buzzed in rhythm with my heartbeat. I turned away, not knocking, clawing. I froze. The sound came from my front door, not the walls, not the floor above. The door. Something was raking against it. Fingernails, maybe, or claws. Too sharp, too slow, too patient. I stared at the door, then quickly looked back through the peephole. Still nothing. Then, my phone buzzed again. A text message. The screen glowed in the dark room. Look up. I didn't want to. My body said no. Every muscle tightened, but curiosity won. I tilted my head back. The hallway had a long vertical window set above the door, one of those old transom windows you can't open, just meant to let in light. And there it was. A face. Pressed against the glass. Grinning. Too many teeth. Rows and rows of them, like something that had mimicked a smile without understanding it. Its eyes were black, bulging, unblinking. And the skin, if you could call it that, was gray and slick, like something that had been living underwater for too long. I stumbled back, phone slipping from my hand. My heart was hammering in my chest like it wanted out. By the time I dared to look again, the face was gone. The next hour blurred. I triple-locked the door, turned every light on, tried calling the police, but my signal kept dropping, full bars flickering in and out like a taunt. I finally got through. 911, what's your emergency? I started to explain. Told her about the calls, the scratching, the face in the window. She asked for my address. Then she paused. The operator asked, "Sir, are you alone in the apartment?" I said yes, my voice trembling. A longer pause this time. Then the operator asked again, "Are you sure?" That's when the line cut out. I don't remember falling asleep. I must have at some point. Because I woke up, sprawled across the floor, blanket tangled around my legs, the tea now cold on the table. And silence. The rain had stopped. No tapping, no thunder, just quiet. The kind that presses in on your eardrums. I checked my phone. No signal, no Wi-Fi, but one notification. New voicemail from the same number. I hesitated, then played it. A distorted voice came through. "Let me in." I deleted it immediately. My fingers were trembling so badly I nearly dropped the phone again. I tried calling friends, family. No calls went through. Then my lights flickered and died. Darkness in an old apartment is suffocating. It's not just the absence of light, it's the way the dark seems to move, to breathe, like it's watching you back. I grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer and went from room to room, checking every lock, every window. I closed the bathroom mirror cabinet, only to catch in that split second of reflective flicker something behind me in the hallway. I spun. Nothing. I was spiraling. I knew it. Sleep deprived, maybe still dreaming. That's what I told myself, until I opened the fridge and found the inside wet, dripping, not from condensation, from something else, red, diluted, like rusted water. On the bottom shelf, a single object, a phone. Not mine. Old. Flip style. The kind you don't see anymore. And its screen lit up. One new message. I'm inside. That was when I made the decision to leave. I didn't pack, I didn't even put on shoes. I just grabbed my keys, flung open the front door, and nearly ran straight into my neighbor, Mrs. Delaney. Old, sweet woman, lived next door for 20 years. She looked off. Her eyes were wide, unblinking. Her hair was damp, hanging in strands like she'd just stepped out of the shower, though she was wearing her nightgown and slippers. She opened her mouth, and the same voice from the calls came out. A wet, gurgling voice. You didn't listen. I slammed the door in her face and locked it, all 3 locks. I backed away, heart pounding, until I was in the center of the room. Then I noticed it. A sound beneath the silence, dripping. Not from the faucet, from the ceiling. I looked up. A large, dark patch had bloomed in the plaster above me. Slowly, it expanded outward, and with every drip, I saw movement. Fingers, long, gray, slick fingers pressed through the cracks, like the ceiling was just a thin membrane. Then, something fell onto my living room floor. I ran into the bathroom and locked the door, pressing my body against it. Whatever it was began to move, wet slaps of limbs dragging across the hardwood. I could hear it breathing again, that same gurgling, choking sound. Then, a knock at the bathroom door. Not a clawing this time, just one single knock, followed by a whisper. Please, just answer. I didn't. I sat there for hours, knees pulled to my chest, breathing as softly as I could, waiting for daylight. Eventually, the knocking stopped. So did the breathing. When the sun finally rose, I crept out. My apartment was empty. No trace of water, no broken ceiling, no wet footprints. Even the fridge was dry. The only thing left? That old phone. Still glowing. Its battery hadn't died. Still hadn't. Every day since, it buzzes once, the same time. 2:03 a.m. Always the same message. I'm outside. I moved, changed numbers, got a new phone, left everything behind, but the messages kept coming. Different phones, different numbers, different cities. Always the same voice. Always at 2:03. Last night, it changed. It said, "I'm getting closer." And this time, it came with a photo of me, sleeping.
I was walking home from the bar when the storm hit. It wasn't supposed to rain that night. The sky had been clear just an hour ago. But now, fat drops lashed the pavement, soaking my hoodie in seconds. Thunder rolled across the rooftops, echoing between the buildings like a warning shot. I didn't live far, just a 10-minute walk through quiet streets, but something about that night felt off. The kind of silence that feels too loud, like the city was holding its breath. I was halfway down Kensington Lane, where the streetlights flicker and the potholes fill up like miniature lakes, when I noticed a puddle, right in the middle of the sidewalk. Not unusual, really, but something about this one. It shimmered weirdly under the streetlight, like oil on water. I slowed down, squinting at it. And then I saw the reflection. It wasn't mine. It was her. A woman, at least that's what I thought at first. She had long black hair that dripped like seaweed and hollowed-out eyes that stared straight through me. Her skin was gray and slack like wet paper. And her smile, God, that smile. It split her face ear to ear, too wide, and she was waving. Just a slow, gentle wave, like she was welcoming me. I stumbled back, heart jackhammering in my chest. The puddle rippled, and then slithered forward. I froze. A trick of the light? My drunken imagination? I turned and walked fast, feet slapping the wet pavement, not daring to look back. But every few steps, I saw it. Another puddle. Another glimpse of that horrifying face beneath the surface. And each time, she was closer. I stopped in front of the old laundromat near my building, breath hitching. The place had been closed for months, its windows boarded up with graffiti tagging the doors. But in the broken glass of the display window, I caught a glimpse of something behind me. A movement, a flicker of hair, and then I felt it. A hand on my shoulder. Ice cold, leathery, damp. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. Instead, I ran. I don't remember how I made it home. Just flashes, my key jamming in the lock, the door slamming shut, the chains sliding into place. I stood in the hallway, soaked and shaking, water pooling at my feet. My apartment was still, familiar. The hum of the fridge, the ticking of the hallway clock. Safe, or so I thought. I walked to the bathroom, flicked on the light, and stared into the mirror to catch my breath. And that's when I saw her again. Not in a puddle this time, in the mirror, behind me, closer than ever. Her hand reached up from behind my shoulder, but this time, she stepped out. I don't know how long I was out. Hours, maybe. I woke up on the bathroom floor, my clothes still damp, and the mirror cracked down the center. And she was gone. No trace, just me. But something had changed. It started small. My reflection would blink a second later than me, smile when I didn't. I thought it was stress, lack of sleep, maybe some bad trip from the drinks that night. But deep down, I knew I wasn't alone anymore. She was still with me, watching, waiting. I started avoiding mirrors, covered them with towels. I refused to walk on wet pavement.
Friends said I looked pale, jumpy. I couldn't explain it. How do you tell someone you're being followed by your reflection? I went online, forums, occult sites, urban legends. One thread stood out. A user called Scryer13 wrote about mirror parasites, entities that attach themselves to reflections, using puddles and glass surfaces to slip between worlds. They grow stronger the more you see them, feed off your fear, and when they're strong enough, they cross over. Just like she did. Desperate, I tried everything. Burned sage, drew salt circles, even contacted a self-proclaimed medium off Craigslist. She lasted 5 minutes in my apartment before screaming, "She's not behind the glass anymore! She's inside you!" Then she ran. Never heard from her again. It wasn't just reflections anymore. I'd wake up with damp footprints on my floor, the smell of mildew and pond water in my sheets. One night, I found hair, long, black, and dripping, clogging my bathroom sink. Another night, I saw her standing outside my window, on the 3rd floor, smiling, waving. My friend Kevin came over to check on me, said I looked like hell. I tried to act normal, made coffee, laughed, brushed it off, but when he excused himself to the bathroom, he was in there too long, way too long. I knocked. No answer. I forced the door open. He was standing there, stiff, staring into the mirror, mouth open, eyes wide, and his reflection wasn't doing the same thing. It was smiling and waving. Kevin doesn't talk to me anymore. I don't blame him. He saw her too. I'm not sure if she followed him or if she came back. All I know is I see her all the time now. Not just in mirrors, in windows, in polished doorknobs, in elevator doors, even in my own shadow when the light hits just right. Last night was the worst. I woke up to the sound of rain again. Except my windows were shut. The storm wasn't outside, it was inside. Rain pattered on my hardwood floor. I stepped out of bed and my feet splashed into ice-cold water. My apartment was flooded, but only an inch, just enough to reflect. I looked down, and there she was, smiling, closer than ever. Her hand reached up from the puddle and gripped my ankle. I screamed, fell backwards. When I looked again, she was gone, but the water remained, still waiting. Right now, I'm sitting on the kitchen counter, writing this on my phone. The lights are flickering. The air smells like algae. She's coming again. I can feel it. Every drop of water, every reflective surface, she's in them all, waiting, smiling, waving. I've smashed every mirror, taped every window, poured paint over anything that can reflect, but it's not enough, because when I blink, I see her, right behind me, and she's stepping out again. If you're reading this, don't look in the puddles. Don't trust your reflection, because once she sees you, she never lets go.
I was the voice behind Midnight Signal on station 103.6, an AM frequency barely anyone tuned into unless they were truckers, insomniacs, or the kind of people who like to whisper their secrets into static. My name's Ron Keller,
Back then, I called myself Night Owl Ron, but that was before the last broadcast. It was a job that paid just enough to keep the lights on. I'd show up at 10:45 p.m., pour a stale cup of coffee from the station pot, and take my place in the glass booth. My show ran midnight to 4, and most nights I'd fill the airwaves with blues tracks, late-night dedications, and the occasional call-in. That night started like any other. Gray clouds bloated over the city, the kind that don't just rain, they press down. I remember the pressure behind my eyes, the tension like something was about to break. I almost called in sick, but something made me go. Some stupid sense of duty, or maybe it was just the quiet. I'd grown used to being alone at that hour. The studio sat just outside the city limits, in a squat concrete building, half swallowed by weeds and kudzu. It used to be a Cold War communications relay station, long before FM became the king. The generator hummed in the back. The fluorescent lights flickered like they were stuck between two worlds. I settled into my chair, greeted the silence, and went live. Good evening, Nighthawks and static chasers. You're tuned in to Midnight Signal with yours truly, Night Owl Ron. Tonight's a wet one, so if you're out on the roads, drive safe, and if you're holed up somewhere warm, stay there. I spun a slow, bluesy track, my usual opening. That's when the storm hit harder, like something punched the sky. Lights flickered. For a second, everything went black. Then the backup generator kicked in. Except there was no signal. Dead air. I tapped the transmitter, checked the board. The red on-air sign blinked, but nothing was broadcasting. I leaned into the mic again. Looks like we're experiencing some technical difficulties, folks. Hang tight while I get things sorted. Might be the storm. That's when the phone rang. Not the studio request line, the internal line. The old rotary one on the wall, the kind no one uses anymore. It wasn't even plugged in. I stared at it, let it ring once, twice. Then I picked up. Hello? At first, nothing. Then, a voice, barely more than a whisper, filtered through with white noise. They're in the walls. The line went dead. I froze. I looked around the booth. Nothing. Just equipment, vinyls, shadows. I laughed it off. What else was I supposed to do? Guess we've got prank calls from the Twilight Zone tonight. Always a pleasure. I queued up another track manually since the automated system had failed. While the needle dropped on the vinyl, I heard it. A scratching sound. Faint, irregular, like nails on drywall. Not from the headphones, not from the audio feed, from the wall behind me. I spun around, pressed my ear to the soundproof padding. There it was again, like something crawling inside. Mice, I told myself. Rats, maybe. Old buildings had that. Probably just the storm rattling things loose. But then, the glass on the booth darkened. It wasn't tinted. It wasn't supposed to do that. I stepped out of the booth and looked at the hallway lights, flickering, one by one, down the corridor, like dominoes falling. And standing there, in the final flickering bulb, was him. A man in a black suit, completely soaked, water dripping from his fingertips, pooling around his feet. He didn't move. His face was like wax held too close to a flame, half melted, lips parted in a grin too wide, and in his hand was a microphone. Old, chrome-plated, World War II era. He lifted it slowly and whispered into it. Live. On air. Then he was gone. I blinked. The lights returned. The hallway was empty. I told myself it was a hallucination, stress, isolation, sleep deprivation, until the board lit up. Every phone line blinking. All 5 of them. At once. And the labels, they'd changed.
Where it used to say line 1, line 2, now it read booth, transmission, listener, wall, him. The last one pulsed. The phone started ringing. I didn't want to answer, but I did. Hello? A childlike voice whispered, "Do you hear it now?" A low sound humbled into the call, a signal beneath the static, a sound like hundreds of voices whispering through layers of water. A woman voice came through. "Don't let him speak. If he speaks, he comes through." A man spoke. "He used to be the host until he stopped listening." Then silence. The lines cut at once. The lights above the board dimmed again. The air inside the studio grew heavy, like breathing through wet cloth. And then, through the soundproof glass, I saw the booth. I hadn't gone in yet, but he was already there, sitting in my chair, smiling. The vinyl spun backward. I hadn't touched it. The jazz track I queued up reversed into a garbled mess, distorted saxophone, laughter hidden in frequencies. I wanted to run, but my feet wouldn't move, and the mic light blinked back on. Red light, on air. The door to the booth creaked open, not a sound, but an invitation. I stepped in, and the door slammed shut behind me. Inside it was cold. My breath misted. The equipment was soaked. I looked at the board. My voice wasn't feeding into the system anymore. It was his. The voice that came out of the speakers wasn't mine. Voice on radio. "Thank you for tuning in to the last broadcast. I'm your host now." I screamed. No one heard. I hit every button, pulled every plug. Nothing stopped it. Then the scratching started again. But now, from inside the booth. I turned slowly. Behind me, in the mirrored glass of the soundproof wall, I saw them. Faces, dozens, no, hundreds, pressed against the other side, trapped. Their mouths moved in silence, eyes wide, hollow, watching me, begging me to stop the broadcast. But I couldn't, because the mic was in my hand now, and I was speaking, as if I was possessed. Live, on air. The last thing I remember was the static flooding my head. Not sound, presence, like something ancient pouring into me through the wires. The feed came back online at exactly 3:33 a.m. Listeners called in afterwards. They said they heard a voice shift halfway through, that I'd told stories in a language no one recognized, that the music I played wasn't jazz anymore, it was something else, something that made the radios bleed static even when turned off. I woke up the next day in my apartment, covered in water, my shoes still on, mud on the carpet, the key card to the studio in my back pocket. But here's the thing. The station was gone, demolished years ago. I went to the lot, just rubble and weeds. There hasn't been a broadcast from 103.6 since 2009. And yet, every night at 3:33 a.m., if you turn your dial just right, between the static, between the hums, you'll hear me. Not me, the other me, the one who never left, still behind the glass, still holding the mic, still live, on air.